What's up, nerds, and welcome back. This is Frank with That Nerdy Site. Today, we're taking a look at my top games from 2019. It was interesting to take a look back on my year in gaming for 2019, especially as for me, it was mostly a quiet year with a lot of long stretches in between anticipated releases. This gave me more time than usual to dive in and tackle older games that were occupying my backlog still, but regardless, I was still able to find many games putting plenty of hours into them in 2019, and the following is just the games that had the biggest impact on me over this last year. Shovel Knight: King of Cards. King of Cards is the fourth and final campaign added in the Shovel Knight Treasure Trove collection, marking the end of development for the original Shovel Knight and making this one of the most packed platformer packages out there. I'm continually amazed how the developers are able to change and innovate one of my favorite games of 2014, entirely changing levels while still leaving them familiar and recognizable. As with the other campaigns released, not only have the levels been changed, the gameplay has also been revamped and customized to fit the new star of this game, King Knight. His main attack is a shoulder charge forward, and when an enemy or wall is charged into, he'll fly into the air with a twirl, hurting enemies or breaking blocks to reveal new areas or jewels. This shoulder charge slash twirl combination sounds basic, but is used in a wide variety of platforming challenges. Having to chain enemy flips and midair charges is the true thrilling challenge of the campaign. The story also dives deeper into the character of King Knight. Being set before the events of the Shovel Knight campaign, King Knight is questing to obtain his castle seen in the game through a new card game that has been sweeping the land. While the gameplay is interesting and the new card game added to the campaign is novel, for me this campaign fails to reach the heights of the original or the highly enjoyable Spectre Knight campaign. After Party is a neon-drenched bar crawl through hell where you only have one goal: beat Satan in the ultimate drinking contest and win your freedom back to the land of the living. Stylistically, I feel like this game was made for me, and I've been drawn to it since I first laid eyes on it. The setting, humor, storytelling, and voice acting had me hooked early into the adventure, while the unique aspect of trying different demonic cocktails to give you alternate dialogue options and ways to tackle situations is enjoyable and encourages both exploration and alternate playthroughs of the game entirely. As an example, early on in the first bar, your first objective is to get past the bouncer to the party upstairs on the second floor. In this scenario, you could consume a certain drink to make you more antagonistic and begin a fight with other patrons to cause a disturbance and sneak past. Alternatively, you could have a drink to be more charismatic and join a game of beer pong with some of the local demons to earn their friendship and an invitation upstairs. Ultimately, this is also the biggest failing of After Party, as all these decisions impact the experience you have, but never really impact the larger narrative. The path you took, the demons you befriended, the ones you made enemies were all your choice, but the story will always move you forward to the same final decision, which funnels you into one of three endings for the game, which themselves are not very different from one another. Far Cry New Dawn. I'm a longtime fan of the Far Cry series going back to Far Cry 3 and every game onward since then. Far Cry New Dawn does an interesting job at modifying the world built for Far Cry 5, and I don't mean just reusing the same map or game assets, although in typical Far Cry fashion, those are definitely here. But in the continuation of the world after the events of the ending of Far Cry 5 itself, spoilers for Far Cry 5. In the ending moments of the canonical ending of the game's setting, Hope County, Montana, is struck by several nuclear missile strikes, as well as several other American cities, which isn't depicted in that moment. New Dawn picks up 20 years later, with the last characters remaining from Hope County trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic wasteland that used to be their home. The deeper RPG leveling and crafting is an interesting addition to the game, and something I'm anticipating and hoping to see refined better in future mainline entries in the series, with the beautiful world design and the addition of some of the crazy abilities and some fun story moments for fans who enjoyed Far Cry 5 is what the game truly has going for it. Of note though, even with all the changes, the Far Cry formula was really starting to wear on me during this entry. I even abandoned the Platinum Trophy this time around, which I usually always grab from these type of games. Ape Out. This is the first game on my list from one of my favorite publishers out there, Devolver Digital. They've been that punk rock teenager at the game publisher table for years now, and most of what they release is right up my alley. You'll usually find a combination of style, great gameplay, and amazing music, which is all here in Ape Out. The wonderful gore of bashing its flattering guards around the map as an ape is bolstered by the amazing dynamic jazz soundtrack, which has drum and cymbal crashes thrown in based on the mayhem you cause. One of the main gripes I and many have against the game is the feeling of randomness you get sometimes towards the end of the game when you end up dying over and over and over until everything suddenly lines up in one magical run that lets you through. Overall, this is a very fun game with one of the best soundtracks this year. Devil May Cry 5. Going all the way back to the PS2, I've heard nothing but great things about the Devil May Cry series. In anticipation for 5, I went back and finally dove into the last 4 entries on the series on PS4, and I can honestly say I was hooked from the intro cutscene of the first Devil May Cry, as it does an amazing job of setting up Dante and this entire world full of demons. Going through the ups and downs of the series and watching these characters meet and grow to like each other over their love of the over-the-top demon hunting is so enjoyable, and Devil May Cry 5 is what this has all been building up to. Featuring some of the slickest combat yet, the classic over the top action, and the fantastic demon design the series is known for, while I didn't have to wait as long as many other Devil May Cry fans, I can without a doubt say that I am now one of you, and I am happy to have the series back in top form, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. Kitana Zero. This neon-soaked 2D platformer, also published by Devolver, is truly a highlight in the action platformer genre. It has the unique twist that you are planning out your attack for the designated mission. If you die, everything simply rewinds and starts over to give you another attempt, as that plan won't work, and you will keep trying until you find the successful plan of attack. This game honestly features one of the best soundtracks of the year. I've been listening to it constantly, even while working on this list. It perfectly fits the gory and thrilling gameplay found by hunting enemies level by level, but also having to be careful as you'll die in one hit and your plan will be reset. On top of all of that, an interesting narrative has me hoping that they'll bring this to PS4, where I can spend even more time with it and hopefully get a platinum. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Respawn is an amazing developer, and I am so happy to not only have a finished single player focused Star Wars game released, I'm absolutely thrilled to have it be by them. This game nails the feeling of not only being a Jedi, but growing into that role, constantly learning new abilities and ways to combine them in combat scenarios. I feel this system is so varied that I was learning and getting better throughout the entire game, but I didn't fully realize how I could use or combine certain powers until even the very late hours of the game, in my endgame cleanup for the platinum. It was a true highlight of the game for me, while somewhat of a grind if you hadn't been frequently exploring your surroundings or secrets or collectibles. Absolutely destroying large groups of enemies who you struggled with earlier when backtracking through areas never loses its fun. While I do love BD1, the overall story is somewhat lackluster here, especially the ending feels sort of rushed and the conclusion is fairly anticlimactic. Additionally, the missing feature of fast travel in this game is a complaint of mine. While that may sound minor, I found this a big annoyance more than once, especially when hunting through the entire world for one collectible to then have to traverse all the way back to the beginning of the world to my ship and then fly to the next destination. I get this missing feature does encourage exploration and lends to some realism to the adventure, but ultimately it would have saved me so much time when simply hunting for my last collectibles, like the scan that BD1 refused to acknowledge until my third trip to that planet. And the few times I made a mistake when navigating the map, only to spend 10 minutes navigating back to where I was, God help you if you make another mistake while doing this. This is especially prevalent on Planet Zepho. Despite its flaws, I absolutely recommend this game to the action-adventure fans out there, and especially any Star Wars fans. Trials Rising. For me, Trials is like that gaming comfort food. I addictively played those Flash games like this as a kid, and as an adult I've been hooked on this beautifully polished series with an amazingly simple yet precise gameplay, which slowly evolves from the beginner levels you get through with basic throttle and lean technique to the highly difficult, hard, and extreme courses. These require mastery of so many techniques learned through previous courses, while earlier levels are usually built around a certain mechanic or showpiece. These later levels require you to combine abilities you've learned, sometimes in almost impossible way. When you've been struggling on a certain course or challenge for a long time and finally nail it, it's the best feeling out there. The biggest flaw in this game has to be the new leveling system implemented in this version. Before progressing forward and unlocking new courses was based on your performance and levels you already had, giving you more incentive to go back to perfect them and better your skills. Here, in an almost RPG fashion, levels are tied to experience, for example having to be level 25 or 50 to enter a certain circuit or tournament. It doesn't sound like a terrible idea, maybe even helping players who can't get past certain courses but want to continue with the game. At the start, this isn't that bad, as leveling happens decently fast and content is varied, so if you get bored or stuck, there's new things to try. But after hours and dozens of levels later, this ceases to be the case. The XP you earn from completing new levels doesn't scale correctly to how much you need to continue leveling, especially in the late game, as the XP earned from replaying a level, even with a better medal, is basically nothing. The reason this feels off is because you also earn loot boxes with player and vehicle customizations when leveling, so in a way it's almost like you're being held back from earning too many of those in order to possibly encourage you to buy some, but it thus ultimately slowing the progress of the game itself or could even halt someone entirely. I still had an overall great time with this, as I think most Trials fans will. The core gameplay is here, but with this new system, it could be troublesome for some longtime fans. As I mentioned with Far Cry New Dawn and its similar RPG mechanics that have been added, if it's going to come back, I definitely want to see it refined better than this. Borderlands 3 is the sequel to is simply one of my favorite games of all time, probably one of the best ever made. Borderlands 2. After having put hundreds of hours into that game with nearly 10 full playthroughs across 5 different characters on 3 consoles, it's safe to say that this was my most anticipated release of the year. The characters and the world had me hooked early on, but the addictive gameplay and the never-ending hunt for loot kept me coming back again and again, just as Borderlands 2 did with its predecessor. Borderlands 3 has a lot of great quality of life improvements, mantling, sliding, NPCs that can revive you, and so much more. There's also innovative new additions to the series like loot instancing, where loot from chests is individually tailored to each co-op player opening the chest. It's great to have this fun co-op game back in my life, where now it's even easier to squad up with friends for the entire campaign, or drop in and out between different people's campaigns as they're progressing through the story. I haven't gotten to spend as much time as I would like with Borderlands 3 yet, but I think it's safe to say I will be spending a ton of time with this game, especially as I go for the Platinum Trophy. It took me until 2019 to finally get the Borderlands 2 Platinum, but I definitely think it'll be faster this time around. I hope. Sayonara Wild Hearts. This seems like an odd choice for my game of the year, but it was an odd year. When I really think about what impressed me the most or what game really stuck with me, and what I really couldn't get out of my head, it was Sayonara Wild Hearts. To start off with, this is usually described as a playable pop album, which is fairly accurate, but Sayonara Wild Hearts is about so much more than that. From its own description, it is a game about riding motorcycles, skateboarding, dance battling, shooting lasers, wielding swords, and breaking hearts at 200 miles an hour. All of that and more is set to an outstanding soundtrack full of original music made for the game, and a fairly nice story told not by voice acting, but by the soundtrack, the levels, and the bosses themselves. The game tells the tale of a young woman struggling with not only heartbreak, but her identity as a whole. One night alone in her room, a diamond butterfly appears in her dreams and leads her on an adventure where she finds her other self, the masked biker called the Fool. Now on a quest to find the harmony of the universe hidden away in the hearts of the other tarot, Little Death, Dancing Devils, Howling Moons, Stereo Lovers, and Hermit 64. And the visuals are honestly one of my favorite from any game ever. Given the other games I've highlighted, this probably is understandable, but I really have been thinking about these visuals a ton since playing. I think one of the more interesting things about this game is the simplistic control scheme. You move left or right to avoid obstacles and collect gems, and you have a button designated for certain timed events and jumps. I also like that it isn't just locked to that. There's a deeper level of challenge here if you're looking for it. With not only the gold medals on each level, which you can only get by making it through the level in one life, while also collecting as many gems as possible to have a high enough combo, there is also Zodiac puzzles that act as the achievement/trophy list for the game. Some of these do get difficult, and anyone still up for more can try to tackle getting gold on one run through the entire game in one life. The final thing to talk about has to be the soundtrack. It's the best of the year, honestly. Here's one of my favorite parts. I definitely can't say enough about this game, but the visuals, soundtrack, and gameplay are something everyone should experience. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, subscribe for more and check out thatnerdysite.com for more nerdy content.